What is up, everyone? Sorry for the delay. I am still moving everything around. So, I have no speakers now for some reason. What's up, Brunos? How's it going, man? I hope you guys can hear me. I think the mic is on. I think. Let's see. Do we have audio? Yeah, we have audio. It says we have audio. But speaker is definitely not working. I don't know why. Yeah, no speakers. I don't know why. Just doesn't work. It's weird. So, yeah, I decided to use my desktop for like a permanent streaming device, but I don't know. I did kind of get the camera to look pretty good though. Camera looks all right. So what has been going on? So it's not going to be background music unless I put something on my laptop over there. But I didn't have time to do that. So Saturday mornings are kind of rough and tumble. So how's everything going? What's going on over there, Bruno's? How's India treating you? How y'all doing? Coronavirus is going crazy over there from what I hear. You know, I'm realizing something really fast. There's a lot of misinformation out there about this pandemic. Lots. Like, for instance, if a person comes up positive on a test and then they go back and get tested again, does that so they come up positive, then they go back and test again and they come up negative. So are they going to continue to count that positive? But of course they are, because it perpetuates the narrative. But I mean, why do they want to perpetuate this narrative of this virus? I mean, just because it's news and there's nothing else to talk about? I don't know. 77% recovery rate in India. Do you know anybody personally that's gotten it and has died from it? I don't know anybody that's died from it. I know some people who have gotten it, but I know people who've gotten it and had like very little symptoms. Like where I know somebody who got sick for a couple of days. You know, was basically in bed with a fever for a couple of days. I have no doubt that this is a real thing, but you know, I still cannot get myself to justify all of the reactions that the governments around the world have done, you know, have had because of it. I still can't. I mean, to me, it just looks like an excuse for them to expand their oppressive power. You know what I mean? And take more control over their citizenship. Because it just seems, I mean, I don't know if it's every government's intent, but, you know, like our government here is supposed to be a government by the people, for the people, you know. But it doesn't look anything like that anymore. You know, it's more like it's a government that just wants to find ways to further lessen the power of the people. Let's shut this thing off. It's popping. It's not working anyways. So, you know, I think that's what bothers me is that it's no longer a government for the people. And if it was for the people, they wouldn't be shutting down people's businesses and, you know, causing all this mass panic and stuff and basically just letting the media control them. As long as COVID is here, the more we are in lockdown. You know, you should be free to take your own risk. That's always been my stance. Is you should be free to take whatever amount of risk. I mean, isn't that how life is in general? You're free to climb a mountain. You know what I mean? You can go rock climbing, and risk your life on the side of a mountain for enjoyment purposes. You should be free to take whatever amount of risk you want to take in regards to whatever diseases or viruses are out there, whether it's corona or anything else. I mean, at some point we got to quit protecting stupid people. That's what I always say. Like seatbelt laws. Seatbelt laws protect stupid people. If you're stupid enough not to wear your seatbelt when you're in a car, then you deserve what happens to you when some idiot smashes into you. But yeah, it's just bad that this thing happens. Yeah. Oh yeah, the gun control one. They got like 30 subs off of that. It's interesting. I'm kind of happy about that because it was that's one of my, of course, the endless wars and stuff and bringing our troops home. That's my number one issue with government right now. But right behind that is our right to self-defense. So I was happy that that video did so well, about gun control and stuff. Because since that's what it was. Fighter was about gun control. I keep forgetting that. I could show these chat things. So like if somebody's watching it after the fact, they can see which comment I'm talking about. I don't even have to read your comments anymore. I can just hit the button and StreamYard pops it up on the cast. So yeah, I rearranged my whole room again, and I have my desktop I'm using for streaming. My laptop's back there. My laptop actually came with some video editing software, so I might try to shoot a video a little bit later today and see if I can edit it. So, oh yeah, the comments were pretty good too. I tried to answer as many of them as I could. So let me see if there was anything I missed. That would be cool to go over this morning. Is some of the comments um, on that video on that podcast. I don't know what that was. Oh, Spike and see, I don't even know if you guys can hear the. Can you guys hear that? I don't think you can hear it. The video. Oh, I'd have to move it too. Yeah, I bet you guys can't hear it though. Man, I'm gonna have to get that fixed. Need sound. So I always like playing a Joe Jorgensen or Spike Cohen video, but it doesn't look like I'm gonna be able to do it this morning because I don't have any sound. Still a little blurry though. Looks blurrier on there than it looks like on here. It's weird. Oh, like Phil Still said, but you're not saying there should be no laws. I thought that was an interesting way. It's like you're not saying that there shouldn't be no laws, right? And I'm like, that wouldn't be completely bad. But I think there should be some laws, especially to protect those that are that don't have, those the least of us. There should be some laws that protect the least of us from the most of us. It shouldn't be totally, survival of the fittest, so to speak. How am I feeling? All right. No, need to go this way. Yeah. See, now I'm not so blurry, but that's definitely blurry. How much worry that you seem uninterested or wore out? Yeah, it does kind of wear me out, though. Politics in general kind of wears me out. I get tired. And I also have a sleep disorder. I told you that. So, uh, especially with the evening casts and stuff, like 6 p.m., I'm winding down. So, about 8 o'clock, I'm ready for bed. So I get sleepy, but, push through. But like I say, I always say that, when it comes to being tired, like where your strength ends is where your strength ends is where God's strength begins. So no matter how tired I am or, worn out or whatever, I feel like I can shut down and I just, give God control. Just say, hey, you take me through this and we make it through. So I may look like I'm tired, but this guy never gets tired. So, what is going on? Yeah, I guess that's that's it, like no laws, but we should have we need government to basically protect our liberty. But it's just like an organizing institution that's there to protect the community at large and defend our freedoms from whether it's a foreign oppressor or from a local oppressor. And I just maintain a system to perpetuate freedom. I don't do the intro countdown anymore. I didn't think anybody was interested in that. My intro countdown. Hey, I like that one, Bruno's. No laws, it's anarchy. I don't do my intro countdown anymore. I notice the thumbnails are not much effort and topics. On Saturdays, yeah, because I just kind of if I don't think of a topic, like sometimes I almost had a topic I was going to talk about, but I was rearranging all this stuff in my little studio here last night. So I didn't really have time to put it together. I guess if, I have more time and I don't, I get into the politics stuff and it kind of wears me out and then I don't really want to research that much. And there hasn't been anything that really jumped out at me to that, I got to talk about this next podcast. And you're right, though. I mean, sometimes there is, like, because I give myself about, 2.5 days in between podcasts. And those 2.5 days, there's usually some kind of topic that gets my attention that we could talk about, So, I could, and there's nothing that stops me from posting the topic and the thumbnail for the next podcast. What was that? Oh, there's nothing that stops me from doing that. So, I could do that. But then it's more work than it seems. I can tell you that much. Like doing the countdown timer and the thumbnails and thinking of titles and descriptions and all that. It's a lot more work than it seems. And I try to, it's fitting this into my normal life and everything. So, no laws is anarchy, Bruno's. So, you say that like anarchy would be a bad thing. So, yeah, in such dense population areas, then yeah, it probably would be a bad thing. But anarchy, see, they added something to the definition of anarchy. Anarchy is just the absence of laws. That's the way it was. But now they call it the disorder associated with the absence of laws. Just because there's an absence of law does not mean that there's instantly going to be disorder. You know what I mean? Just because there's no law, not everybody is a good person just because it's against the law to be a bad person. You know what I mean? Not everybody doesn't murder because it's against the law. Not everybody doesn't steal because it's against the law. Most people don't do it because they know it's wrong. We have a built-in moral code, or we have a moral code that's been transferred down from generation to generation. So the absence of law, is that a bad thing? I don't know. Could be. And then you think about it, what's to stop if there was no law? I'm talking no government, no law, complete anarchy, as you would call it. And so what would stop good people, which the majority of people are good. Majority of people would not do bad things, would not organize. Now you got to get, first off, before you consider this analogy, before we start going down this rabbit hole talking about anarchy, the first thing you have to do is get every single movie you've ever watched that's dystopian or shows a society that's without law. You got to get that out of your head. That's fiction. All those movies, all those books, dystopian books, like all that's, just get it out of your head. It's all fiction. So the absence of law, let's think about that for a second. The majority of people, I believe, are good. They are moral. If I asked you right now, are you a moral person? If it wasn't for law, would you be a horrible person and go out and take advantage of less fortunate people and stuff like that? You would probably say no. You'd be like, no, I'm a good person. So I believe that there's more good people than there is bad people. And I believe with the absence of law, with nothing to stop the bad people from hurting the least of us, the good people would come together to defend. That's how we ended up with centralized governments from the beginning, was good people came together and just to defend the least of us from bad people. So, that's kind of how the United States was founded, was, the colonists got together because they were tired of the oppressiveness of the British Empire into their lives and decided to stand up against it. There was no government amongst the colonists. The only government was the British government. So to overthrow that, you could say they had a form of anarchy. But what they did is they decided to establish a method of forming a government for the people at the same time as they declared their independence and established a form of government through our Constitution. So to answer this question, so you want the USA to have anarchy? No, I've never said that. It's an interesting thing to talk about, but no, I think society would run smoother with some kind of established law. It gets rid of a lot of the gray area, which is necessary in order to defend and protect the least of us. But I think at some point there's just too much of it. There's too much government interference. The laws have become too controlling, and it's taking the power away from the good people to do good things. It's a shame because, if the law wasn't doing it, people would do it anyways and they would feel better about it. So there would be no laws, rules, or regulations regarding the environment, traffic safety devices, or repair of streets and roads. Sidewalks wouldn't be shoveled and open to the public. Shoveled. The city doesn't, or the government doesn't shovel our sidewalks anyways. If you're talking about yeah, they would snow plows and stuff like that. And the roads thing, and this keeps coming up. Like the past 4 or 5 days, I keep getting the whole roads argument. There are ways to to maintain roads that doesn't require government. Privatized roads is not completely insane. Now, it's a definite, in the United States here, it's definite, 1,000-meter target. It's way down there. It's not something we would want to try to attack right away when you got criminal justice reform and you got soldiers over there dying for no reason whatsoever. And, you got the war on drugs incarcerating mass amounts of people. So it would definitely be a short thing. But we can talk about it. How to privatize roads. You can do tolls. You can do it through vehicle licensing. You can do gas taxes. The gas tax, I don't think works so well anymore because there's a lot of electric cars. So the cars that, you have electric cars that were using the roads, but they wouldn't be paying the gas tax. So, but there are lots of different ways that you could charge the people that are using the roads for the roads. And if it was like neighborhood, then you could have a neighborhood association, privatized neighborhood association that would maintain their own roads, and they could charge people for access. They could charge the neighborhood a certain amount for maintaining the roads. Roads are not that expensive to maintain, believe it or not. Interstates probably the most expensive, and building them is expensive, but maintenance isn't all that expensive. So traffic safety devices, like, you're talking about like street lights and stuff like that. I got you. Same thing. If you use it, then you pay for it. So, and it would be pennies, really, like toll roads. If every road was a toll road, then it would be really cheap. The thing about toll roads now, because government controls them, it's not privatized. If it was privatized, it would be better. It would be fairer. So the way toll roads work now is they're basically just a supplement. They're supplementing the income for whatever city they're in. It doesn't actually go to pay for the road. So they build a road and then they'll charge a toll in order to pay for it. And you can look this up anywhere. It happens all the time. So it costs $15 million to build this giant road. And they're like, well, we're going to charge a toll. We're going to charge this toll for this amount of years in order to pay for the road, right? So they charge a $3.50 toll for 5 years. And they get $20 million out of it. Well, the $5 million, that extra that they got, doesn't go to maintain it. It just goes back into the city's general fund, and they use it for whatever they want. And they continue to charge the toll. So with privatized toll system, you would either they would charge, and of course the private company is going to make a profit off of it. But if they charge too much, then people will be more inclined to take the other toll road. Or somebody would build another toll road. So it's just like in a free market system. If you start charging too much for your product, then somebody's going to come up and challenge you because you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So, same thing with iPhones. Why don't they charge $10,000 a phone if everybody loves iPhones so much? Because if they did, Android phones would get a big boost. It's just like the easiest analogy to use. So there's a lot of different ways you could do it. If you got government out of roads. Now, I don't have any problem with taxation as far as maintaining infrastructure like that. I don't have a problem with that. A lot of libertarians do. So don't take this as a straight libertarian stance, because I would say a vast majority of libertarians do have a problem with our tax dollars being taken from us and used to pay for roads. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. But I want my tax dollars, I want to know specifically what portion of my taxes are going to pay for roads. And I want to see specifically how that money is being spent. You know what I mean? So that's the problem right now, is we have no accountability whatsoever. So I don't know how much of my taxes goes to pay for roads, and I don't know if they're using it for that. So there's no accountability. We have no idea where our tax money goes. It just goes into this giant bundle of cash that the government gets to use in whatever way they want. The tax system and tax code in the United States is so stinking confusing. There's no way to maintain any accountability. So my idea is a flat tax. You know what I mean? It's not my idea. I'm not that smart, but a lot of libertarians we eventually would like to remove taxation completely, because it is theft. It is the government stealing your money. So But most people, and I think even Joe Jorgensen's talked about it, it would be okay with going to, most libertarians would be okay with a flat tax that says, every person's going to pay 10%, 10% of their income as tax, with the intent that it never goes higher. So you set the tax rate. No, Bruno says our roads are horrible anyways. I've seen that. I've watched some movies in India, and I like they look like old country roads everywhere, and they're like connecting major cities, and it's just like this old country road. I'm like, wow. Yeah, Bruno says we all use the roads, so we should be helping pay for them. It's funny because me and my brother were talking about that when he was here. He surprised me this weekend for my birthday, and we got together. So we were talking about that, and that was his thing: is we all use roads. Well, we all don't. I mean, you I guess in one way or another, but like my mother-in-law doesn't drive. So she doesn't necessarily use the roads. Now, the person who drives her places uses the roads. So, but in one way or another, I guess we do. Because like my brother brought up is like the products that we buy from the store get transmitted. Every single product that you buy usually has to spend some time on a truck to get to the store. So in that sense, when you buy something from the store, whether you rode a bicycle, walked, or anything else to go get it, when you bought that item from the store, that item only made it to the store because it was on a truck and the truck used the road. So in that sense, yeah. But I mean, if you grew your own stuff like the Amish, you grow your own food and make your own clothes and all that stuff, then, that's really such a tiny portion of society that would fit into that category. So yeah, it's my brother's a smart guy. He's all right. He doesn't watch my podcast. So. I think he caught pieces of it. And he was like, "That's pretty good stuff, man." Saturday or the Tuesday one. But yeah, so yeah, that's true. That's true. One way or another, we all kind of use the roads, and I think that's probably why I would be okay with everybody paying a portion of that. Of course, you could take a portion of sales tax for items you buy in stores and use that to pay for the roads also. So like there's also ideas about luxury taxes and stuff too. But the flat tax would just be a flat tax rate that could never go up, only go down. So, that's the only way I would be okay with it, is that it could never go up. So no matter what, like you say, it's 10%. So you tax everybody in the United States, which right now, believe it or not, the average American in the United States pays over 30% in taxes. Over 30% of their income is paid in taxes. If you include income tax, which is taken right out of your paycheck, sales tax, which is taken right out of right at the cash register, or property taxes, which is what you pay for your house even after it's paid for. The reason why you never really own your home is because you have to continuously pay property taxes. So if you count all those taxes up, the average American pays like 35% of their income in taxes. For 330 million people to do that, it's pretty insane if you ask me. That's just, the average tax rate being 35% is crazy. Like literally 35% of what you make is stolen from you by the government. It's crazy. So I think if it was a flat tax, of course, that probably doesn't apply to people like Jeff Bezos and the very, very rich. And no, that's not just the Republicans' fault, because the Democrats have done the same thing. So it's government's fault. There's so many loopholes in our tax system. If you have the good attorney, you can find them all, and make money off the government's incompetency when it comes to managing our tax law. The fact that the tax law is like 750,000 pages or something like that, or some insane amount, tells you that it's, there's thousands of loopholes in there for major corporations and tax attorneys to find, but not for average Joes. So, but a flat tax would even it across the board. Everybody pays the same amount. And that the reason I say it could never go up is because the government would have to balance that with the GDP. So gross domestic product, how good the economy is doing. If the government wants more money, they're going to have to find ways to get the people to make more money. So there's no more loopholes and stuff like that. Here in the US, they always use the roads argument. But what about my roads? You forgot it should be like this. It's my roads. My roads. Yeah, it's like us in the that's the one of the biggest arguments against libertarians. And it's funny because it's like, oh, so you're okay with the government forcing businesses to close and endless wars. That puts the United States more at risk. I mean, those of you that are in India, just think about if China, well, China's already trying to invade you guys, but say China invades India, right? And the United States comes to the rescue, but then never leaves. You know what I mean? We're just going to stay there in India, and we're going to build bases and stuff, and keep our military there. You would probably not think that's a good idea. Like, why does the United States have to occupy our territory? And that's kind of how. Well, it's a little bit different, but that's kind of how Saudi Arabia and Kuwaitis feel. Now with Iraq, it was like, what if, all of a sudden your government went crazy and got super oppressive and, tried to, wait a second, they're already doing that. I was going to say, locking you down in your houses and controlling the production and all, but they already do that. So just say, your government got really, really bad and they started like testing chemical weapons on cities and stuff like that. And the United States came in to liberate you, then never left. So, these are the things that cause more enemies. You know what I mean? And that's the problem with these foreign wars and stuff too. So it's just the expansion of government power. We have all this crazy bad stuff, the war on drugs, where we're incarcerating people and throwing them in jail for life for the possession of a plant. It's just, but people honestly won't vote libertarian because they think my roads, I'm going to lose my roads. Really? And the thing is, libertarians aren't that stupid. You know what I mean? We're not stupid. I guarantee you. As a matter of fact, libertarians are probably the smartest average political party. You know what I mean? The average across the board, if you took the average intelligence of every political party, libertarians are probably the smartest. I mean, I've met some super intellectual libertarians. I mean, think about it. I mean, we have probably the most Nobel Prize winning economists. You got F.A. Hayek and Milton Friedman. Did Rothbard win a Nobel Prize? I'm not sure. I know. When did Bruno says, why does your government try to fix every country? No other country do that in the world. I know, right? It's a good question. I mean, why does all of a sudden it become our business to police the world? It's ridiculous. I don't know. Well, I know it's because they want to expand their power. You know what I mean? And it's political. It's this partisan political bickering. They create things that they can argue about. You know what I mean? That they can fix. It's ridiculous. It's like somebody said, everybody that was involved in 9/11, we just celebrated the 19th anniversary of 9/11. So literally, we've been fighting this endless war in the Middle East for 19 years. Everybody that was involved in 9/11 is either dead or no longer in power. The only thing we're doing over there now is creating more enemies for ourselves. We're creating our own terrorists. For every building that we raid and every bomb that we drop. Evolve says it's to stop terrorist cells and dictatorships from forming, but we're actually causing them to form. Because when you invade another country, just think if the United States was occupying your country, it's an occupying force. You no longer feel like you're sovereign. Americans would never tolerate that. Another country occupying us, establishing a military presence in our country. We would never tolerate it, but we do it all over the place. And it actually creates more terrorists. More people hate us because of it. You know what I mean? Because we're an occupying force over there. I know because I've been there. I know how they feel. Yeah, they may smile in front of your face, but I mean, they're not happy that they have an occupying military force in their country. And so if somebody rises up to power, whether it's a dictator or not, if they're willing to stand up against that occupying force and they show patriotism for the country, then people are going to rally behind that. Even if it's another Saddam Hussein who rises up in Iraq and is, hey, I'm going to give Iraq back to the Iraqi citizens and we're going to get rid of the United States, then people are going to rally behind that. Now the United States just created a dictatorship. So it's just stupid. It's the worst. The occupying force of a military is the worst foreign policy there possibly is. The diplomacy and trade is the way to establish friends and remove terrorism. If you want to get rid of the bad guys, then you be more of a good guy. You can't get rid of bad guys by being a bad guy. It just doesn't work. You can't get rid of terrorism by being a terrorist. It doesn't work. It's through peace and diplomacy and trade and being a good neighbor that you create good neighbors. You know what I mean? To think about it in your neighborhood. If you're an asshole, then your neighbor is probably not going to like you, and you just created an enemy. But if you're a friend and you offer them your eggs or your milk or your sugar, in trade for maybe some fruits off of their tree, then they're going to be friendly with you, and they're less likely to break into your house and rob you and stuff like that. So I mean, it's just dictators that rise up, America strikes them down. Oh, really? So everything's all good over there now, right? Afghanistan's. So why are we still there then? If we struck down the dictator? Oh, because we have to establish another government. We have to establish our own American dictatorship over there. Because that's the thing is it seems like the governments that we're trying to establish in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and Libya and wherever else we're at, those governments are basically, we're going to establish a United States friendly power that doesn't have to pay attention to the United States Constitution. Because if we establish them as a territory, if we actually were involved in taking over countries and stuff like we were back in the day, then that country would have to be protected by the Constitution of the United States. So it's something else I was thinking about is, it's nice that we can establish a presence in these other countries, but we don't have to give them the protection of the Constitution because they're technically not a territory of the United States, like Guam or Micronesia, U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, places like that. They're afforded the protections of the Constitution. So by law. So the legal system abides by the Constitution. You can't even, in Puerto Rico, even though Puerto Rico isn't a state of the United States, their citizens are still protected by the Constitution because it's a commonwealth, I guess is what it is, right? Or it's a territory of the United States. So like we basically took over Iraq, right? We established military presence there, but we won't claim Iraq as a territory of the United States because then every citizen of Iraq would be protected by the Constitution, which would make the military, which would basically restrict the military's actions in those countries if they were all of a sudden protected by the Constitution. I don't get what the U.S. is trying to achieve. What are they trying to achieve over there? I just agree, better structure. What are they trying to? 19 years, fighter. 19 years. What are they trying to achieve? What's the end game? Do they ever talk about it? What's the end game over there? That's a good question. So I do get what the U.S. is trying to achieve. I don't get it. I don't get it. Better structured governments and laws are good for a good society. Absolutely. But you're not going to get better structured governments and laws by using an occupying military force. It doesn't work. It worked. I guess you could say it worked in Japan, but we didn't establish it. The Japanese did. We just established, hey, you're not allowed to do this, 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 and this, and you can have your country back. And we got out. We didn't occupy the country. Why are we still there with our forces? It's a political ploy. And if you believe anything that the government is telling you about why we are over there in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, or any of those other places, then you are just buying into the political ploy. It is just a political tool that they can use to throw about each other. That's why every single election year they talk about bringing the troops home, but none of them have ever done it in 19 years. 19 years. In other words, there's kids that were born after 9/11 that are over there dying because of it. 19 years. It's like the longest war in history, I think. I don't know. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense to me. I can't justify it. I have no idea. Well, so what's going to happen if we just pulled all the troops out? They would probably establish a government and become a viable country again without our intervention. They have an army. Afghanistan has an army. Iraq has an army. Well, I mean, why are we there? I don't know, except politics. Why is Corona such a big deal? Politics. It's all politics, man. We've allowed the government so much power and so much control over our lives that we are now living our lives in a state of politics. And it's crazy because politics has all of this control over our lives and stuff. And yet a vast majority of Americans don't care. They don't care about politics. They will sit there and allow us to become a socialist country and never even pay attention, wondering why they can't buy toilet paper at the store anymore and they have to go get issued it from the government, and not realizing that it happened right in front of them. Every time they pulled the lever at the voting booth, that's what they were pulling the lever for. Not even realizing it, just because they would rather just ignore it and let it grow. It's just like a cancer cell. You know what I mean? Just because you ignore it doesn't mean it's not going to eventually kill you. To form a more perfect union, we are helping establish that, as Evolve said, if people are happy, then terrorist cells won't form. But they're not happy. They're not. Like I said, would you be happy if the United States was occupying your country? If you had an occupying military in your country from another country, not establishing it as a territory, not establishing it as a territory that allowed it to flourish like the United States flourished, but simply establishing a military presence in order to prevent your own military presence from forming. So basically establishing control by means of force, by military force, and not doing anything else. They're not. And I'm sorry, but Evolve don't know what the hell he's talking about. He's full of crap. Absolutely not. It does not establish anything. They're not doing anything. Why would it take 19 years to do it? 19 years. Going on, and there's no end in sight. There's no end in sight. Why have we not been able to establish that country in order to make it self-sufficient and maintain itself in its own purpose and leave? It didn't take us that long to do it with Japan. And look, now Japan is a competing country with the United States. You know what I mean? But when we dropped the bombs on Japan and they surrendered in World War II, we were supposedly doing the same thing with Germany. It didn't take 19 years for them to establish themselves as a country again and for the U.S. to get the hell out. But we stayed in Germany for a while. We just had established bases and stuff. We weren't patrolling the country, maintaining law and order or whatever you want to call it. Terrorist cells. You're creating terrorists. That's what you're doing. Every bomb that's dropped, every house that's raided is just creating more terrorists. Every civilian that's killed, or even every military guy every insurgent that's killed, creates another terrorist. You can't get good by doing bad. This doesn't work. If America was trying to form a government over here, our people and military would unite and drive the U.S. out of India so fast they may come back and nuke us. Well, India has nukes too, so that's probably why we don't do that. It's establish a government. When are we trying to establish a government? That's what I'm hearing now is we're trying to establish governments over there. We are? They have governments over there. We are an occupying military force. That's it. They have their own militaries over there that have been trained and armed by America. It's funny because you take Afghanistan, for instance. Afghanistan they had the Taliban, right? The Americans were allies with the Taliban against Russia. So we were funneling weapons and stuff to the Taliban. That's why over in Afghanistan, we're fighting, and when we were fighting the Taliban, I don't think we are anymore. Now we're just fighting insurgents or civilians that want us out of their country, which is what they call insurgents, is civilians that want us out of their country because we're an occupying military force, which is the same thing Americans would do if there was an occupying military force from another country here, and probably the same things Indians would do if there's an occupying military force in India. So anyways, but it's beside the point, I guess, because we don't talk about that. But anyways, when it was the Taliban that we were fighting over there, we were fighting an army that was using our own weapons that we had given them. It's all politics, man. It's all politics. If you think for a minute that it's anything more, you're wrong. It's just politics. To form a more perfect union, we're helping establish governments. Why would it take 19 years to establish a government? We're more technologically advanced. I would think that we're smarter than we were back in World War II days, but we were able to establish governments in Germany and Japan and get the hell out pretty quickly. You know what I mean? They have their own militaries and stuff. We provided protection for them. Like Japan, they're not allowed to have their own army or navy. So we provide protection for them, but we're not allowed to establish like a military presence where we're patrolling their streets. They have their own police force and everything else. We don't get involved in their government. Their government is sovereign, so. And exactly what gives them the right? What gives us the right to go control and establish, without establishing them as territories, without actually, taking over countries, what gives us the right to stay there? Either make it a U.S. territory and we can go back into the expansion ages, like they did back, kingdoms expanding and stuff like Rome, keep conquering countries and then now you're part of Rome, but we don't do that. We do something in between, this limbo area between, we are going to conquer you, but we're not going to make you part of us. Well, what is up with that? I can agree that America can help some of these anarchy-style governments. I just looked up on Wiki, and we have killed a total of 17 rising dictators. Based on who said they were rising dictators. Because a dictator to one person could be a savior to another person. So it all depends on your point of view. And history is always written by the victors. So yeah, it's all point of view there. We can help. We can help some of these anarchy-style governments. Those aren't the ones that need help, though. They don't. And that's not the way to help them. You're not going to help them by military occupation and force. That's not going to help them. You can help them by diplomacy and trade and embargoes and stuff like that, and foreign aid. And, you can establish yourself as a good neighbor, and the citizens would be, I mean, why, if we are so in, why haven't we attacked North Korea yet? Huh? North Korea is one of the worst dictatorships in the country. The freaking people are starving. Anything we do diplomacy wise always ends up hurting the people more than it hurts the government. Horrible, horrible. Why haven't we? Why haven't we overthrown North Korea? But we overthrow Iraq and Afghanistan, established military presence there. Why? They don't even have nuclear weapons. There's way worse dictators than what was going on in Afghanistan and Iraq. I know why we went over there. I know why we went to Afghanistan because they were harboring Osama bin Laden, supposedly, in the caves or whatever. And we went to Iraq because supposedly that's who bombed us at 9/11. Wasn't true. It was actually Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia was our ally. So, we can't point fingers at our allies because Osama bin Laden was Saudi. He wasn't Iraqi. So, I mean, it's just, right. The U.S. named them dictators. And that's, why didn't we do it in Cuba? We had Castro over there. Castro lived a long and luxurious life, and that's like right off the coast of the United States, communist Cuba. We heard rumors of atrocities and everything. Why didn't we ever go down there and overthrow that dictator? Why do we get to pick and choose what dictator? If we're going to police the world, then why are we picking and choosing what country we're going to police? Because it's all politics. It has nothing to do with trying to make a better world for the people in those countries. It's absolutely false. It's baloney. Venezuela, we can't, it's just insane because it doesn't work, for one. Right now we've already created, if we pull out of Afghanistan and Iraq, I guarantee you we are going to leave there with more enemies than we started with. There's more citizens and people in those countries that hate us now because we've occupied their territory and caused all of this havoc in their own country. There's more people that hate us there than when we first got there 19 years ago. Guaranteed. And it's not going to get better until we get out, until we allow them to have either establish them as territories of the United States and expand our government over there, or get the hell out. This tiptoeing the gray area between conquering and occupation, it just makes more enemies. You know what I mean? If it was the Iraqi state of the United States, then, the Iraqis at some point would probably rally behind that and say, hey, we're Americans now. We're part of the United States. But that's never going to happen either. Why? I don't know. But I don't know. I sent him an invite. He never joined. Evolve. I send him an invite every Saturday morning, so. But yeah, he's snoozing. U.S. brags about their war crimes, right? Like, flying a drone into some Iranian general. That's assassination. It's assassination. So, because he bombed troops over there or something. That he was. Why are we there? He didn't bomb the United States. He bombed somebody else's country. U.S. troops were there in somebody else's country. So they would have never been bombed if they weren't there. So. USA brags about their war crimes. 17 dictators killed. Yep. Doesn't surprise me. All right. I wish I had sound. They control all the organizations that are built to hold them accountable, like NATO and like the Geneva Convention and what is it, United Nations and NATO and all that stuff. So they control them. You know what I mean? It's nobody wants to stand up to the big bully on the block, I guess. It's about time it needs to stop. I mean, and this one is the only one that's willing to stop it. I guess I didn't have to lean forward. I could have just pointed like this one is the only one that will stop it. Or then they're like, oh, they all say we're going to bring them home. You know, what makes you think the libertarians are going to do it? Hey, give us a chance. You know what I mean? Let's see if Jo Jorgensen's lying. You know, she says on day one that she's going to decriminalize marijuana, bring the troops home, and pardon all nonviolent, victimless crime offenders at the federal level. She can't really do anything about anybody else, but that's what she says. So yeah, it's I don't, you know, it's like what would be the worst thing that would happen? You know what I mean? If the U.S. just mind its own business. I mean, we are the consumers in the world. We are mass consumers. There is hardly any country that could serve in the world that would their economies would be able to survive if the United States was not buying their products. I mean, that's a fact. And we're not even the biggest. You know, we're not even the most populated. We're just the biggest consumers. 330 million people probably consume more than your 3 billion that you have in India. You know what I mean? We're just this massive consumers, you know, of spend, you know, we fund so many economies around the world. You know, why don't we flex that power instead? You know what I mean? Through peaceful means. You know, like, hey, you keep treating like the dictator, you know, you keep treating your citizens like that, then we're going to quit X and X and X that's supplying to your economy or helping your government out or, you know, whatever. You know, there's so many peaceful ways to get somebody. I mean, we do it with North Korea all the time. You know what I mean? And then we eventually feel sorry for their people because every time we try to restrict their government, they end up putting it on their people. And well, but you know, the North Koreans don't hate us because we're not occupying their country. So even if we happen to quit buying products from North Korea or quit supplying products to North Korea, then the people usually look at like the government like, well, why are you being mean to the United States? You know, if you weren't mean to the United States, then they would be, you know, helping us out. But you guys are being, you know, buttheads. So that's why. So the people start looking at their own government as the problem, you know, and that's actually a good thing, you know, because then that's how things get fixed. But occupying the country doesn't work, you know, through trade embargoes or diplomacy or, you know, and then you can see the United States using these peaceful means in order to help or establish friendships with other countries. Then the countries that have dictators or crappy governments, those people will see that as well and be like, hey, the United States isn't that bad. Look, they're helping this country that's kind to them. Our government's not kind to them, so that's why they don't help us. We need our government to be kind to them. So I mean, that's how you establish friendships, and it's through peace. It's not through war. It's not through force. It's everything our government does. They have a monopoly on the use of force, even against their own citizens. So it's like, yeah. So what happens at these protests whenever the cops or the National Guard show up with guns and stuff? That's when it gets violent, right? You had a show of force, and now you're going to get force back. It's like what was that? Einstein's law, right? The law of physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the USA don't like dictators. They allow some of them. They allowed Castro. They allow Kim Jong-un. So I guess it all depends on the dictator. That's a lot for day one. Right? I know. I said the same thing. I'm like, I don't. You better have that's gonna be rough. But those are actually all things, though. Bringing the troops home completely within the executive power. Decriminalizing marijuana, like taking it off the Schedule 1 list of narcotics, that's completely within executive power. She could do that. And pardoning all nonviolent offenders or victimless crime offenders that are in federal prison. She can do that day one also. So these are all, she's very smart because she said those things knowing that those things are within the power of just the executive branch, that she would not have to go to Congress or the Senate to get it done. So it's pretty smart. Because other things, like fixing the immigration system or doing any major changes to tax law or anything, most of all that stuff would have to go through Congress and the Senate. And it actually has to come from them. So a lot of this stuff is not within the power of the executive branch. The executive branch or the president only has the power to veto or approve laws that come from Congress and the Senate. Most law in the United States is supposed to begin in the House of Representatives, which is our congressmen and women. And then it comes up to the Senate. And then from the Senate, it goes to the president. So what happens is a committee or whatever in Congress or in the House of Representatives will establish a law. Then they vote on it. And if it gets approved at that level, then it goes to the Senate. And the Senate is 2 representatives per state. So there's 50 senators or 100 senators. Yeah, there's 2 representatives per state. Actually, there's 52 because I think there's 52 senators. I don't know why. But anyways, they vote on it. And if it passes the Senate, then it goes to the president. And then the president can sign it into law or he can veto it. If the president vetoes the law, then it goes back. So it only requires a majority to go that far. If the president vetoes it, then it goes back to the Senate and it requires 2/3 vote to pass the Senate if the president vetoes it. So. It's something else that bothers me is that it's like so many Americans just don't care, man. And I think, and that kind of wears on me too. You're talking about what kind of, I get worn out and stuff. Is I just realized that, it's like people just want to establish their opinions and that's it. They don't care whether their opinions are right or wrong or just, piled full of political bull. Oh, Bruno says, I just searched for a way why USA is still in Afghanistan, that they are still harboring a growing amount of groups intent on attacking the US. So let's think about this for a second. Logically. Let's use logic for a second, Bruno's. I'm going to show you why the internet is not your friend sometimes. Googling things and just reading them. And it goes back to what I was just saying, how people are, I'm not saying you are, Bruno's, that you're politically complacent or anything, but this is just how people get pulled into that, and then people will be looking for, they'll be looking for something to justify their way of thinking rather than actually looking at it with open eyes. You know what I mean? Actually looking at a subject or whatever with an open mind. They're actually looking for things to further establish their own opinion. But so let's look at that logically. So they're harboring a growing amount of groups intent on attacking the United States. So we have in Afghanistan, we have an occupying force of soldiers, military, that are not bound by the rules of the Constitution of the United States. They're not police, and there's not a court system established as long as they don't perform any violation of the Geneva Convention or their own military law, which is not the same as constitutional law at all. So as long as they don't act outside the grounds of war, by like torturing or murdering civilians or anything, they can operate in any way that they deem fit. So we have an occupying military force that uses those rules as its foundation, right? So you are a terrorist organization that's intent on attacking the United States. Would you establish yourself in that type of situation where you are face to face with the US military? If you're intent on attacking that military, sure you will. So would you establish yourself there, or would you just hop across the border to Saudi Arabia and establish yourself there, knowing that the U.S. isn't patrolling Saudi Arabia looking for you because we're allies with Saudi Arabia and we can't have an occupying force there? Sure, they'll let us have some established military bases that are strictly restricted. I know, I've been there too. Troop movement and stuff is strictly restricted in Saudi Arabia by the Saudi Arabian government. But Afghanistan, the military has, the military commanders have freedom of movement any way that they seem strategically fit, right? So why would you continue to establish yourself in Afghanistan if it wasn't to fight the occupying force? So there may be a growing amount of groups intent on attacking the U.S., but I would think that if you're in Afghanistan and they're probably intent on attacking the U.S. troops that are in Afghanistan, not attacking the United States mainland. Because if you were a terrorist organization that wanted to do damage to the United States, you could easily establish yourself in Venezuela, in Korea, in Saudi Arabia, or Turkey, Pakistan, India, find you a little hole in India somewhere to hide out and build your base or whatever. And, massive amounts of empty land out there that the U.S. isn't even looking at, so why would you do it? It just doesn't make sense. That's how I try to look at things. When I read things, I try to look at it, from a logical point of view. It doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, it probably isn't true. But a lot of people will buy that line wholeheartedly. Oh yeah, because there's a bunch of terrorist cells in Afghanistan that want to bomb the U.S. No, that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And why are we still there? Why haven't we found them all yet? It's been 19 years. Why are we still in Iraq? Why are we still in Afghanistan? Why are we expanding to Syria? Well, because of al-Assad, I think it was al-Assad. So we don't like that guy. We don't like that dictator, but the other dictator's okay. It's like, come on. It's regime change. I mean, that's what we're doing, is we're establishing, we're putting in power whatever government we think will be friendly to the United States. It's the same thing we did with the Taliban in Afghanistan. Then look what happened there. The Taliban were our friends when they were fighting, when the Russians were fighting Afghanistan for like 20 years. You know, but then we go in and we fight the Taliban. Why? Because they're harboring terrorist cells. And how many terrorist cells do you think we've destroyed that were intent on attacking the United States? I bet you can't find that number. In 19 years, how many terrorist cells did we find and destroy in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria that were intent on attacking the United States, that had the capabilities? You know, and that's kind of the silliest place to start anyway. Starting in South America would be or Canada. Heck, Canada would be the smarter one. It's easier to cross the border. You know, so, I mean, it's just. But anyway, it's a good conversation, though. It's tough, man, but it's, you know, sometimes doing less helps more. You know, the U.S. is continuously creating more enemies by every military regime change that we attempt around the world. You know, it's like Fighter says, you know, why do we have to, or I don't know if it was, oh, that was Bruno's I was saying, why do we have to be the police of the world? You know, and when does that become our responsibility? You know what I mean? That's what NATO and the United Nations are supposed to be for, which I don't agree with those organizations either, because that's what they're all about, you know, is regime change. You know, that's something that has to happen within a country, like it happened here. You know what I mean? The French eventually came and gave us a hand at the very end, but generally speaking, they didn't occupy our country either. They came and helped us out and kind of hung out for a little while, but they didn't occupy our country. We beat the British. I mean, you want to talk about the biggest upset in history. It's, you know, 13 tiny colonies overthrowing the British Empire, you know. So, I mean, but that's how it happens. It's the evolution. And then those people establish their own country based on the opposite of what they overthrew. You know what I mean? Like the people rally together and they overthrow the dictator, then they can establish their own constitution and independence based off of, and they can put in that constitution everything they didn't like about that dictator. That's what we did. You know, that's why the right to bear arms and freedom of speech and freedom of religion was all part of the first two amendments to our Bill of Rights in the Constitution, because those were all the things that the British were oppressing from us, that were not allowing us to do. They weren't allowing freedom of speech. They weren't allowing freedom of religion. They weren't allowing the right to bear arms. They were confiscating weapons and stuff like that. So. You new here? Where's my partner? Good question, man. Somebody needs to call that fool up. Tell him to wake up. I send him an invite every Saturday morning, but I don't know. I would say he probably partied too hard last night, but I know for a fact that Evolve does not party. So yeah, I send him a. Hey, that's the other thing. This is probably going to open up a whole nother box. I don't know if I want to open this up right now because it could extend this conversation for a while. Yeah, he pops in, and I sent him the invite for StreamYard, so he could just pop in. I would put him up on my little thing here, and you know, we do a little split screening, but you know, because you can do all kinds of fun stuff with this. But you know, I sent him the invite. Here, I'll send it to him again. He's probably not gonna listen. It's already an hour into it, and if I bring him on, this will be another hour. Well, I can get him talking, and then I can go hang out with the family for a little while. But getting him in studio on Saturday, I don't know, because that would require me to get up earlier. So, but I mean, he can join on StreamYard and you know, do like a little. I like it because it gives me like practice interviewing. So if I get other guests on, I'm not trying to figure out how to operate StreamYard and pop his. You know, like when he's talking, when he goes on a little rant, I can pop his face up and put mine off to the side and stuff like that. I really like StreamYard. I wish it wasn't $20 a month. If it was like $5 or $6 a month, then I would probably pay for it. But it's $20 a month, and it's kind of right on that line of whether I want to spend that kind of money or not. Because I know I'm big time like Joe Rogan and everything, but I don't make no money off of this whatsoever. Zero, none. Even on my Cash App, I even got my Cash App linked in my description. No donations. I've had people tell me they were going to donate, and nobody donates. Which it's not on this description yet. I need to fix that. Oh, we were talking about why the United States is occupying all these other territories around the world, like Afghanistan. Why do we have troops in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and all over the world? And then we're pulling troops. We pull our troops out of Germany. And it's sad because our troops really liked being in Germany. I was stationed in Germany for 3 years. I loved it. Probably my favorite duty station. It was my favorite duty station. I mean, it was. I loved it. It was great. So, so let's get our troops out of the places they like to be and keep them in the places they hate. And that's the other thing. Is it really, whatever we're trying to accomplish over there, fighter, this is for you. Whatever we're trying to accomplish over there, is it really worth the price that we're paying with the PTSD and traumatic brain injuries and all of the soldiers that are coming back with all of these medical issues and stuff that, the price that we're paying at the VA and families and homes with these soldiers coming back with, all these issues and everything, addicted to opioids and the opioid addiction and all. These are our best citizens. I don't care what you say. And I know I'm biased because, I'm retired. I served 25 years, but I know for a fact, because I was around these soldiers for 25 years, these are the United States best citizens. I know they could be crude and rude and ugly sometimes, and there's some bad apples in them. But generally speaking, our soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen are the best that the United States has. And is it really worth what we're doing to them and their families for what's going on in Afghanistan and Iraq? Is it really worth the price we're paying? I was just telling my wife the other day, almost everything I do, this is a military thing because it's been, this is what we do in the military. But almost every decision that I make or thing that comes across to me, I always put it in a risk reward type of thing. It's kind of we call it the risk assessment, right? Is the reward worth the risk or the price you pay, right? Is the reward worth the price you pay? A good example is there was this little 2-lane road called Scenic Drive over here in El Paso, and it's really twisty and turny, right? And at the very beginning, it's 20 miles an hour because it's like super sharp turns, blind corners at the very beginning, and there's like this little brick wall on the right-hand side, and then there's a mountain on the left-hand side, and it's a narrow 2-lane road. Well, I'm getting on Scenic Drive, 20 miles an hour. I'm doing 20 miles an hour, and this guy in this little white car passes me, and not really that fast because you can't pass that fast because it's a blind corner. And the first thing I thought to myself, because I slammed on the brakes so he could get back over into the lane, because the first thing I thought to myself was, this guy's going to go head on with somebody coming around the corner. Head on collision at 20 miles an hour will kill you. And then we get all the way through, it's about 2 or 3 miles, Scenic Drive. It's a nice little mountain, pretty drive. We get to the light at the end. He gets pretty far in front of me after he passes me, but then he gets stopped at the red light at the end of the road, and I come up behind him. So he literally, and then I ended up, at one point, we were kind of going down the same route. At one point, I could have passed him. So he he risked his life to get in front of me, and he gained a few seconds of time, ahead of me. So it's risk reward. Everything is risk reward. So, is or the price we pay versus the damage that it's doing, stuff like that. You don't burn your house down because it's cold outside. You know, so oh God. But yeah, so I just, that's the big thing with me. And if you look at the risk reward, if you do things diplomatically or through trade and stuff like that, the risk reward is you're risking very little, but the reward is you become a beacon again for the rest of the world. The United States hasn't been a beacon for the rest of the world in years. Since the government has grown to the point where it's ugly. We are a beacon of freedom, of the free market. How many people think you can come to the United States and establish whatever kind of business opportunity there is and make a living for yourself? I mean, there's a lot of people that watch this podcast that don't live in the United States. That we had Michael from the Netherlands. I haven't heard from him in a while. Hope he's all right. But we have people from all over the world. So how many people think that the United States is like the beacon of liberty and freedom, and if you have a skill or an idea, that you can just come over here and make a living and prosper? You don't, because you can't. Because immigration laws are so strict and horrible, and it's so difficult to start a business and maintain a business and get a business license, and the tax laws are so confusing. You got to work your way through all that. And you notice everything that I mentioned that discourages people of entrepreneurial mindsets and that have skills that the United States could use to improve our economy. All those restrictions that I just named are all instituted by government. So the reasons why the government grew so much in the beginning was because there was very little government intervention. Immigration was free and open. You could come here, and if you had a skill, you were fast-tracked. Like in Ellis Island in New York, man, if you were a bricklayer, then heck, man, they were stamping your papers and putting you to work quick. You know what I mean? Because New York was growing, it was building. And we could have that same kind of growth and stuff in the United States if we just get government out of it. Government's not your friend. Never will be. Even if you have a friend in government, government itself is not your friend. Government is the oppressor. That's their job, is to oppress. Now, hopefully you can keep them under control and they will only oppress the bad people or the people who are trying to do harm or thieves or fraudulent people. But at some point, that oppression is going to reach you. You're going to be the target of the government's oppression. And that's just the way it happens. And it happens more in other countries. I think the Constitution of the United States has slowed it down and restricted it significantly for us, but it hasn't got rid of it, that's for sure. It's still growing. Evolve got a big Cash App scam video coming out this morning. Oh, Jesus. Don't call it a scam, because a scam makes it seem like it's illegal. And I'm not sure if I can afford to bail him out of jail. We can go and do what we want. We are a superpower. If we don't do it, then it won't get done. No one likes the boss. True. I guess we can do whatever we want. Because even if the whole world got together, they still couldn't defeat the United States. So I guess it's okay to be the bully, right? As long as you're being the bully for the right reason? No, I'm not buying it. People were in slavery till we came and killed the leaders and put in good people. I would like to see an example of where that happened. I don't know. I don't know if the faces were reacting to me or reacting to you. Was it Lila? Is that how you pronounce it? Lila? Well, we came in, killed their leaders, and put in good people. At what price? like I said, so it's okay for our citizens to go fight and die in other countries when we could accomplish the same goals diplomatically and actually not look like. So you think we're the heroes over there? Have you ever been there? Have you ever been to Afghanistan or Iraq or any of these other places where we supposedly ended slavery and put in leaders that were good people? I have. And a large portion of that population don't think we're heroes. What's the difference between a boss and a bully? How they treat you. So a boss that uses force, like with guns and bombs, that's not a bully. A boss that uses kindness and generosity to get the job done, I wouldn't call them a bully, but a boss that uses force is a bully because they're using force. So, I should be highlighting these, man. I got to get better at this. See? Like when she makes the comment, then I'm going to talk about the comment. I need to pop up the comment. Makes me look more professional. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I just don't think it's worth the price we pay. But apparently a large portion of the United States citizens do believe that we need to be scattered about the world, creating utopian governments for other people's citizens, at the risk of our own soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and their families. That's just a sacrifice for us being the boss of the world. Because we keep voting for the same guys that keep doing. I mean, they always talk about, we're going to bring them home. I'm bringing the troops home. Trump said it whenever he ran, and I'm going to bring them. He actually increased I think Obama actually downsized just before he left office, and then Trump is back up to Obama's old troop strengths overseas. I haven't been, but I've seen clips and documentaries and heard testimonials from the people over there. Yeah, you heard what the people who made the documentary wanted you to hear, and the testimonials of the people who wanted you to hear that. So to actually be in the country, unrestricted and unfiltered by media or whatever kind of propaganda they want to feed the American public at the time. It's like any narrative you want to push, you can find. It's like I was saying earlier, you can go online and find anything to support any argument that you want to make. I mean, it's not hard. But facts are still going to be different. The real challenge is to look at the news or around the world and logically discern what the truth really is, because the news isn't even telling you the truth, much less documentaries or any other sources. So you have to think logically. And I know you missed a lot of the. I know. Did I say your name right? I don't like mispronouncing people's names. So Lila, I'm thinking it's Lila. So I know you missed the first part of the podcast, and I encourage you to go back and look at it. Just briefly, I'm going to skim over what I was talking about earlier, is about the United States being an occupying force in another country. Now, if we had an occupying force in the United States, how would you feel about that occupying force? You probably wouldn't like them very much. You may smile in front of their faces or whatever, because they might be providing you with some kind of, toss them an MRE or a pair of sunglasses or something, and people are going to act like they love you. But meantime, you still are an occupying force from a foreign country. The United States hasn't established Iraq, Afghanistan, or any of these other countries as territories of the United States like we used to back in the day, like we did with Guam and Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands and Micronesia and all of these places that we got some of them during wartime, and we've gotten some during peace, but we've established those as U.S. territories, so they're protected by the Constitution and by the laws of the United States. But we haven't done that in Iraq and Afghanistan and all these other countries where we are overthrowing their governments, but we're not establishing our own. We're trying to establish a government that's not bound by the rules of the Constitution, that will be loyal to us. And that's the bottom line, is they want a government that's going to be loyal to our government, but not bound by the laws of the Constitution. Now, why would they want that? It's kind of a scary thought. Because if we would establish those as territories of the United States, then the citizens of those countries would be protected by the Constitution, and the military would be restricted in how they could further act, because the military has very strict rules on how it can be used against the citizens of the United States. All bosses use force, even your partner. I guess that's the level of force that we're talking about then. If that occupying force is the boss, rather I like it or not, I have to deal with it. You had a boss before. Yeah, I don't understand that's true, whether you like it or not. And that's what I'm saying, is the majority of those people don't like it, because it's not. It probably would be a lot better if we would just establish them as territories, because then those people in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, wherever we're at, could say, hey, we're part of the United States now. Then it would actually seem less like a holy war, and or a religious conflict. And that's the other thing, is, the U.S. being a predominantly Christian country, a lot of the terrorist cells and stuff use that as, the Christians are invading Islam, and it becomes a religious thing too. If we established it as part of the United States, then, they would have their freedom of religion like we have here, and it would be protected by the Constitution, and that would be a justifying point but we don't do that. So, and we won't, for some reason. I don't know. We're just trying to establish our own, put our own people in power, and that's the same thing we did in Afghanistan. We put the Taliban in power. We funded them. We gave them weapons, that's why they were fighting the Russians. And, the Taliban was our friends. That was the government we established for them. And then we went in there and overthrow them, 10 years later. So, I don't see how this whole foreign policy thing works. It hasn't worked yet. Why has it taken 19 years to accomplish the goal? A really good bully would be able to finish the job a lot quicker than 19 years. A really good boss would be able to get the job done in 19 years. Either that, or they would just take over the country. Either way, we don't do it. That's a good point too, Bruno's. Who says that we have to be the boss? Why do we have to be the boss? Why is it any of our business what happens in other countries? Because some people are being oppressed? That is not something we can fix. The people of North Korea are being oppressed. The people of Cuba were and probably still are being oppressed. The people of Venezuela were being oppressed. Brazil was horrible, but they fixed it themselves. It happens all over the world. It's just how it happens in a society. There's no way, unless we're talking about creating, and we're not, because if the U.S. was going to expand and control the rest of the world, then that would be a different story. But we're not interested in that. We're just interested in going into certain particular places and bombing them and destroying their homes and destroying their military like a bully, and then putting somebody else in power who will eventually be just as bad as the people that we overthrew. Now there's not even an end game. We don't even know what the end game is, because there is absolutely no end game to, once Afghanistan gets to this point, we can leave. Once Iraq gets to this point, we can leave. There's none of that. We have no end game for any of these regime change occupations we have that continuously are killing and destroying the best and brightest and finest Americans that we have in our country, which is our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, who come back with mental illnesses that will stick with them for the rest of their lives, who ruin their families. And even if I'm saying these are not even the ones who die, these are the ones who would probably rather be dead, because they have traumatic brain injuries, or they're amputees, or their PTSD is so severe they got to medicate to the point of being a zombie. You know what I mean? And then they get addicted to the opioids that they're using as painkillers, because marijuana is not legal here, which works better than the opioids. But, it's a plant, so I guess we can't do that. We'll do these chemicals that the pharmaceutical companies push, and then they get addicted to those, and they're like, oh, no, you're addicted. We can't let you have opioids no more. So then they go out and buy heroin. Now they're heroin addicts, and they become part of the war on drugs, and then they go to jail. This is all because we want to be the boss. They get a corner office. Yeah, this is our corner office right here, I guess. Our corner office is our nice, safe, secluded continental United States. Two of our boundaries are protected by ocean. The northern boundary is protected by a ally that will, one of our most dedicated allies, I guess you'd say. And the southern border is protected by a government we refuse to allow to prosper. You can read into that one all you want. But I got to wrap this up, guys. Need to go say good morning to my family and stuff. So I'm going to hit the road. Good conversation. I loved it. My second favorite topic. About libertarians wanting to bring the troops home. So I'd say my three favorite topics, if you ever really want to get me fired up and talking, would be number one, bring the troops home. Number two, our right to self-defense. And a close third would be ending the war on drugs. Because I believe that those are the three most oppressive and overreaching powers of government. Like, those three things right there are just the government doing too much. But anyways, I'm going to get going. Scripture today. Let's see. I have some brought up here. Yeah, this is a good one. John 16:33. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So through Christ we do have peace. Probably the only peace, because it's not going to be through man. That's for sure. So especially the organizing institution of government, who is predicated on the use of force. So anyways, thank you so much for watching, y'all. Welcome, Lila. Still haven't told me if I'm pronouncing your name right. I appreciate your input. All are welcome here. I love your opinions. I thank you for showing up and commenting. Thanks again, Bruno's, for stopping by, and Fighter. Yeah, I'll keep this going. I like it. I will see y'all on Tuesday. Actually, I'm probably going to be streaming on Twitch. My Twitch link, it's Libertarian Dave on Twitch too. And I have the porcupine symbol for, that's my little Twitch thing, is the porcupine. So Libertarian Dave on Twitch. I'll probably streaming Twitch later. I might check out a game called Dual Universe. I don't know if I'm going to be playing that or something else. I don't know. If you guys want to join me on Twitch and you have a game recommendation, I'll check it out. So, oh, you're going to retire. Yeah, I know. It's getting late over there in India. But have a good night, Brunos. Thank you all so much for coming in, stopping by. God bless you. Remember KIP. Keep it positive and love your neighbor.